meeting of the Council of the City of Springdale for April 3rd, 2024. If we could stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Ms. Pratt, if you could take roll.
Mr. Gleaves.
Present.
Mr. Jacobs.
Present.
Ms. McFarland.
Present.
Ms. Sullivan Cup.
Present.
Mr. Vanover.
Present.
Mrs. Webster. Mr. Anderson.
Present. All right, Council, in your packets you received the minutes for the March 6, 2024 meeting. What is your pleasure?
Move to adopt.
All right. Any questions or discussion? Ms. Sullivan Cup.
Thank you, Mr. President. On the March 6th, towards the end, it's like the second to last page, where Mrs. Messer came to talk. It says Carol Messer, and her name is Kara, K-A-R-A. That's the only correction that I saw.
All right, I think that's we count that as a Scribner's error. I don't think we need to vote on that. I do know that it's Kara. All right, any other questions or discussion for the March 6th minutes? All right, seeing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes with the one typo, signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? The March 6 minutes are approved with 7 affirmative votes. And next we have the March 20th, 2024 minutes. Council, what is your pleasure? Second. All right. Any questions or discussion? All right, seeing none, all those in favor of approving the March 20th minutes as submitted signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Those minutes are approved with 7 affirmative votes. All right, next on the agenda, we have a proclamation for Mayor Hawkins for National Health Week. Mayor Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. I will read the proclamation from the dais, and then I'll have Commissioner Clayton come forward and present it. Whereas, started in 1985, National Public Health Week takes place each year during the first week of April to recognize the important contributions public health has made to our nation. National Public Health Week also highlights issues that are important to creating a healthy future. And whereas the Springdale Health Department works to prevent disease and promote good health within the city of Springdale, Ohio. And whereas the Springdale Health Department has created and supported a strong public health system that engages residents and community partners to foster a healthier community. And whereas a hallmark of the city of Springdale's health department is extensive collaboration among a wide range of public and private sector partners. And whereas this year's theme of National Public Health Week 2024 is protecting, connecting, and thriving. We are all public health. And whereas in April, the nation celebrates National Public Health Week to recognize the important role that public health departments play in sustaining and improving community health to create a brighter future. And whereas the Springdale Health Department is committed to ensuring that the Springdale families are healthy in its collaborative efforts with individuals, families, community partners, and policymakers will promote good health among future Springdale generations. Now therefore, I, Lawrence C. Hawkins III, Mayor of the City of Springdale, do hereby proclaim April 1st through the 7th of 2024 as National Public Health Week in the City of Springdale and call this observance to the attention of our citizens. Commissioner Clayton, will you come forward, please?
Hang on a second, I think you might get a picture. You got to pose. Freeze frame that. Megan gets me in the background this time.
Thank you, Mayor Hawkins. I'd like to thank members of council for the opportunity to be here tonight and also for your support. Thanks to city administration also for continued support of the Health Department. I'm proud to receive the proclamation on behalf of the outstanding public health professionals in our department. And since I'm here, I'd like to also share some good news. Everyone who's talked to me for a few minutes knows that I love to get grants for the city. And today I was advised that the city of Springdale will also receive a grant from the Ohio EPA for 2024, the mosquito control grant. We asked for $22,500, but I anticipate that we'll receive somewhere in the range of $20,000 to $25,000 in additional grant funds. So while I'm here, I just want to share that good news. Again, thank you so much. Really appreciate the continued support of our city and of our elected officials.
Thank you.
Now, was that the first official mayor proclamation from your administration? I didn't know if you realized how significant this was.
I appreciate it. We've done a couple, but this first one I got to do in front of council, so I appreciate that. It's a red letter day.
Thanks, Matt. All right, next we have communications. Ms. Browder, are there any communications for council tonight?
None, Mr. President, thank you.
All right. Next, we have communications from the audience. If anyone would like to address council for any reason, they would come up to the podium, sign in, and you'd have 5 minutes to speak to council on any matter that you care to speak to us about. At this point, I'm opening the floor for communications to the audience.
Thank you. My name's Jim Miller. I live at 535 Ray Norrish with my beautiful wife, Cindy. I spoke at the last meeting about chickens, and I want to take a little bit different angle on that today, and it ties into Mayor Hawkins and the proclamation of health for Springdale. I'm going to start with talking about methane. Methane is like CO2. It's a greenhouse gas. It's actually 80% more toxic than CO2, or it retains heat within the atmosphere 80 times as much as CO2. And I'm not against really CO2 per se. It's carbon to oxygen. Plants take it in, produce fruit, and they return the oxygen. Not too much is bad, but CO2 we all breathe, we all exhale. It's a perfectly natural process, but methane is different. It's a petroleum type gas. And when it gets into the atmosphere, it does cause considerable harm. It's odorless, it's colorless, and you can be affected, your health, by it, either if you are exposed to it too long or in too great a concentration. Interestingly enough, landfills are the third largest contributor to methane gas emissions. And 10 miles down the road is the #1 largest landfill emitter of methane, which is Mount Rumpke. So it's right in our backyard. You can't smell it, but you can get lightheaded, nauseous, and have acute respiratory issues by inhaling too much methane. I put up on the website, I'm going to go through quite a few facts here as fast as I can. I added a link to springcoop.com to detail these studies. Composting food scraps. So the reason there's so much methane that's emitted from these landfills is that people take food scraps and they put it into plastic trash bags. And Rumpke picks it up and puts it inside of the landfill. From that point, you have this anaerobic breakdown, which is what creates the methane gas. It's a lack of oxygen for all these food scraps that creates this problem. Now I'm going to connect it to chickens. If you feed your food scraps to chicken, it's exposed to oxygen, and in fact, it gives you very good compost, excellent soil to plant for food. Your chickens will eat most of your food scraps. They'll eat any bugs that are drawn, and they automatically, because they peck and scratch, will work the soil. You don't need to use plastic bags. It reduces the smell from your garbage cans, and Rumpke will require fewer round trips from picking up food and taking it to the dump. In fact, that would be less traffic on 275 and eventually a cost savings for the city of Springdale for the cost of Rumpke to pick up all the trash. So the city, they did a chicken experiment in Limburg, Belgium. This is in 2009, and they gave 3 chickens to 2,000 families who opted into the program. And the program was simply to use the chickens subsidized by the province in Belgium, feed those chickens your food scraps, and then, of course, enjoy the eggs, but cut down on the waste that they send to the landfill. The link is on the website, springcoop.com. They reduced in the first month 100 tons of food scraps, of organic waste put into the dump through this program. It was wildly successful and has expanded from that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. I don't see any questions. All right. The floor is still open if anyone else would like to address council for any reason.
Kara Messer, 12182 Springdale Lake Drive. Thanks everyone for being here. I just really appreciate you all. These meetings are informative and kind of fun. I really like my neighbors and community members. I want to say that I am seeing so many positive things zooming around Springdale as I go about my day that I really struggled to find something negative to talk about, but I think I picked one: the weather. I'm a little overwhelmed by the weather, but I will say today is National Walking Day, and the community center did an outstanding job of celebrating that. We had participants from the elementary school. We had old and young showing up, walking indoor and outdoor. We even had some runners, and it was fantastic. Also, I'd like to mention that April is National Autism Awareness Month, and I think we have a school, or somebody can correct me, I'm sure somebody knows this, but in Springdale, we have, I think, a school for to support families and individuals with autism. So I think that's to be acknowledged and accoladed. And I think that's all I have for today. So I don't really have any questions. I'm just really grateful for all that is happening in our lovely city. So thank you.
Ms. Sullivan Westcup.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Ms. Messer, for coming out. My dad actually participated today. He walked 3 miles, and I think it's out. My dad walks a mile every day, but 3 miles today for the National Walking Day. I think it's a great idea. And the community center did an awesome job. That's awesome. The Autism Center, it's the Cincinnati Autism Center, and as a center, they do have accredited schools, classes, but they're only gonna be here till the summer, then they're gonna be moving out of Springdale. But yes, they've been here for several years, but yes, they're expanding. It's a good thing. They're expanding, and it's, we're very excited for whatever they're gonna be doing next. But yes, we do have an autism center here, and I do have family members that have autism and on the autism spectrum, so thank you for mentioning that.
Yes, thank you so much for that updated information.
Oh,
I
yes.
appreciate that.
I just want to make sure that you knew, yes.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Also, I have one other thing, if it's okay. What about those Reds? There was like a walk-off homer like the other day. It was so cool. So anyhow, Thanks.
You still have more comments. You've generated discussion. Mayor Hawkins, did you have something to add?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just briefly, Ms. Messer, I appreciate the comments, particularly with regard to National Walking Day. And I just want to say Elizabeth Johnson was the spearhead for all that, and she did an excellent job, was giving out stickers and snacks and water to the residents and the kids that came down. I think they had a couple of different droves of kids coming down from the elementary school. They stayed busy, and I think their goal was 500 miles, and I was down there around maybe 1 o'clock or so, and that was well in sight if they hadn't already gotten there. So they did it.
I did get an email from Elizabeth, and she said the goal was well exceeded. And I think that email was before she left. So, and I think it goes until 9 p.m.
Yeah.
So if anybody's feeling froggy, it would be a great idea to go for a walk.
Thank you.
Mr. Gleaves.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Ms. Messer, for coming down. I didn't know what that was. But piggyback on what Mayor Hawkins said, my wife and I participated. We walked and ran 3 miles today, and Ms. Johnson does a fantastic job. So kudos to her. She had a couple billboards up where you can put in your mile sticker, and I think the goal was 500 miles that they were trying to do, and I'm sure with the kids coming down, we left before they got there, but I'm sure that they got more than they needed, and the kids understand we're really fired up to get there, so thanks for bringing that up. Thanks a lot. It was a good event.
I think you're good now. Thank you. All right, the floor is still open for communications from the audience. Second call. Third and final call. All right, I'm closing communications from the audience. Next up on the agenda, we have a public hearing related to community development block grants. I believe Mr. Yule was going to give us some information first. Is that right? Mr. Yule.
Correct. Thank you, Mr. President. Just by way of background, the Community Development Block Grant applications Council will be considering will be for the 2024, 2025, and 2026 program years. 2 public hearings will be conducted, one this evening and the second one on April 17th at our next council meeting at 7 p.m. as well. The Community Development Block Grant Program is administered by the Community Development Department of Hamilton County, Ohio, and will make funds available to eligible local governments for housing, economic development, public facilities, public infrastructure, and planning activities with the principal purpose of benefiting low to moderate income persons. Comments on the CDBG program or proposed projects will be received at this time during both hearings. As mentioned, the second hearing will be on April 17th, 2024, during our council meeting. The hearings are conducted pursuant to 24 CRF 570.486 and in compliance with the requirements of the Housing and Community Development Act of 1974 as amended. Written comments may be submitted at the Springdale Municipal Building at 1170 Springfield Pike or via email at admin@springdale.org, and we will accept those until April the 22nd. If special accommodations are needed for persons with disabilities, those with hearing impairments, or those in need of translation from English, those individuals should contact the administrative offices at 513-346-5700 or email us at admin@springdale.org at least 1 week in advance of the hearing so that we can make any other arrangements. Just by way of background from our prior years, for the cycle of 2021, 22, and 23, we were successful in obtaining $45,000 worth of monies dedicated to the home improvement repair program, so $15,000 per year. We were able to replace 2 bus shelters at a cost of $26,000 combined, and we also made some LED lighting improvements at our Veterans Memorial for $22,000. So those are what we applied for and received last cycle. We do have several different projects that our department directors are currently working on obtaining some additional information on. One of those is a Heritage Hill sidewalk improvements to repair any sidewalk issues, ADA curb ramps on Kemper Road, new bus shelter installation along Kemper Road, tree planting along State Route 4, parking lot maintenance, and a bus stop bus stop garbage can replacements in several areas. And our community center has also has a project in mind to do some renovations to the current senior center, or senior area. So those are some of the items being kicked around currently, but we'll have a more itemized list to present to council before your next meeting for review.
All right. And as I understand it, we need to have 2 public hearings. So at this point, I will open the floor for a public hearing related to community development block grants projects. So if anyone in the audience would like to speak on that matter, this is your opportunity. It'd be the same as in communications from the audience, except without the timer. And the topic should be limited, in this case, to information related to community development block grants, potential projects, or questions about that. The floor is open for anyone who would like to discuss that. Second call? Third and final call? All right, at this point, I'm closing the public hearing related to community development block grants projects. And as Mr. Yule mentioned, we will have another public hearing at our next meeting on the same topic. And at that point, council will have an opportunity to see some of the projects that are being proposed. And it's like he had discussed earlier, so you'll have some more information. But if you, in the meanwhile, if you have ideas, this is a chance for you to do that. All right, moving on, ordinances and resolutions. First up, we have ordinance number 13, 2024. This is a second reading and can be acted on tonight. Mr. Jacobs, when you're ready.
Ordinance number 13, 2024, an ordinance authorizing the execution of a grant agreement with the State of Ohio Department of Development for participation in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act State Energy Program, Energy Efficiency Program for Ohio communities. Whereas the City of Springdale, the city, desires to increase energy efficiency initiatives within municipal facilities, and whereas the U.S. Department of Energy has allocated nearly $13.3 million in Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act State Energy Program funds to Ohio for energy-related programs, with $8 million earmarked for Energy Efficiency Program for Ohio Communities, EPOC initiatives, and whereas the Ohio Department of Development is authorized to administer the Energy Efficiency Program for Ohio Communities, and whereas the city applied for grant funding through the EPOC for lighting and control upgrades at the community center to include LED lighting installations, direct digital control systems, and utility monitoring, and whereas the Ohio Department of Development has awarded grant funding not to exceed $250,000 to the city for energy efficiency initiatives at the community center. Now therefore be it ordained by the Council of the City of Springdale, Ohio, members elected thereto concurring, Section 1, that the city administrator is hereby authorized to execute a grant agreement with the State of Ohio Department of Development for participation in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act State Energy Program, Energy Efficiency Program for Ohio Communities, the agreement, and to execute any and all other documents and agreements consistent with acceptance of the grant and participation in the program. A copy of the agreement is attached as Exhibit A and incorporated herein by reference. Section 2. Council hereby finds and determines that all formal actions relative to the passage of this legislation were taken in an open meeting of this council, and that all deliberations of this council and of its committees, if any, which resulted in formal action, were taken in meetings open to the public in full compliance with applicable legal requirements, including Section 121.22 of the Ohio Revised Code. Section 3, this ordinance shall take effect on the earliest date allowed by law.
Council, you've heard the reading of ordinance number 13, 2024. What is your pleasure?
Move to adopt.
Second.
All right, discussion or questions? All right, seeing none, Ms. Browder, if you could poll council.
Mr. Vanover?
Aye.
Ms. Sullivan Wisecup?
Aye.
Ms. McFarland?
Aye.
Mrs. Webster? Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Mr. Gleaves?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye. Ordinance number 13, 2024 passes with 7 affirmative votes. All right, next we have ordinance 14, 2024. Mr. Jacobs.
Ordinance number 14, 2024, an ordinance authorizing the execution of a grant agreement with the State of Ohio Department of Development for participation in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act State Energy Program, Energy Efficiency Program for Ohio communities. Whereas the City of Springdale, the city, desires to increase energy efficiency initiatives within municipal facilities, and whereas the U.S. Department of Energy has allocated nearly $13.3 million in Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act State Energy Program funds to Ohio for energy-related programs, with $8 million earmarked for Energy Efficiency Program for Ohio Communities, EPOC initiatives, and whereas the Ohio Department of Development is authorized to administer the Energy Efficiency Program for Ohio Communities, and whereas the city applied for grant funding through the EPOC for lighting and control upgrades at the municipal building to include LED lighting installations, direct digital control systems, chiller replacement, and utility monitoring. And whereas the Ohio Department of Development has awarded grant funding not to exceed $250,000 to the city for energy efficiency initiatives at the municipal building. Now therefore be it ordained by the Council of the City of Springdale, Ohio, members elected thereto concurring, Section 1, that the city administrator is hereby authorized to execute a grant agreement with the State of Ohio Department of Development for participation in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act State Energy Program, Energy Efficiency Program for Ohio communities, the agreement, and to execute any and all other documents and agreements consistent with acceptance of the grant and participation in the program. A copy of the agreement is attached as Exhibit A and incorporated herein by reference. Section 2, council hereby finds and determines that all formal actions relative to the passage of this legislation were taken in an open meeting of this council, and that all deliberations of this council and of its committees, if any, which resulted in formal action, were taken in meetings open to the public in full compliance with applicable legal requirements, including Section 121.22 of the Ohio Revised Code. Section 3, this ordinance shall take effect on the earliest date allowed by law.
Council, you've heard the reading of ordinance 14, 2024. What is your pleasure?
Move to adopt.
Second.
Discussion or questions? All right, seeing none, Ms. Browder, if you poll council.
Ms. Heldem Wisecup?
Aye.
Mr. Vanover?
Aye.
Mrs. Webster?
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Mr. Gleaves?
Aye.
Ms. McFarland?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye. Ordinance 14, 2024 passes with 7 affirmative votes. All right, next we have ordinance 15, 2024. It is another second reading and can be acted on tonight. Mr. Jacobs, when you're ready.
Ordinance number 15, 2024, an ordinance declaring certain city property as surplus property and authorizing the sale, disposal, or transfer of surplus property. Whereas the council has determined that certain property of the city is no longer needed by the city for municipal purposes or useful as such, absolutely or temporarily. Now therefore be it ordained by the Council of the City of Springdale, Ohio, members elected thereto concurring, Section 1, consistent with Article 8, Section C3 of the Charter of the City, and as permitted by Ohio Revised Code Section 721.15, the items listed on the attached Exhibit A owned by the city are hereby declared to be surplus property no longer needed for municipal purposes or useful as such, absolutely or temporarily, and that such property may be sold by internet auction or otherwise transferred or disposed of by the city. Section 2, that the city administrator is hereby authorized to dispose of said property in the manner specified herein. Section 3, council hereby finds and determines that all formal actions relative to the passage of this legislation were taken in an open meeting of this council, and that all deliberations of this council and of its committees, if any, which resulted in formal action, were taken in meetings open to the public in full compliance with all applicable legal requirements, including Section 121.22 of the Ohio Revised Code. Section 4, this ordinance shall take effect on the earliest date allowed by law.
Council, you've heard the reading of ordinance number 15, 2024. What is your pleasure?
Move to adopt.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Questions or discussion? Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd just like to thank Nicole Browder for her work in working with our department heads and getting this list compiled and being able to move these things along, whether it be recycled, donated, or sold. So we appreciate her work on that. Thank you.
Is she available for other spring cleaning? I know my house is quite busy as well. Any other questions or discussion? All right, seeing none, Ms. Browder, if you poll council.
Mr. Vanover?
Aye.
Ms. Heldem Wisecup?
Aye.
Mr. Gleaves?
Aye.
Mrs. Webster?
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Ms. McFarland?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye. Ordinance 15, 2024 passes with 7 affirmative votes. All right, next we have ordinance 17, 2024. This does have the emergency clause. Mr. Jacobs.
Ordinance number 17, 2024, an ordinance authorizing the purchase of certain real property associated with the Northland Boulevard reconstruction project and declaring an emergency. Whereas the city of Springdale, the city seeks to purchase portions of real property needed in order to complete the road construction project along Northland Boulevard, the project, and whereas the city has reached an agreement with the owners of the property to be purchased in order to complete the project. Now therefore be it ordained by the Council of the City of Springdale, Ohio, members elected thereto concurring, Section 1. The City of Springdale City Council hereby authorizes the mayor and city administrator to enter into agreements to purchase the needed portions of the real properties identified in the attached Exhibit A, which is incorporated herein by reference. These properties are needed by the city in order to complete the road construction project along Northland Boulevard. Section 2, the mayor and city administrator are authorized to execute any and all documents needed in order to complete the purchase of the properties identified in the attached Exhibit A. Section 3, council hereby finds and determines that all formal actions relative to the passage of this legislation were taken in an open meeting of this council, and that all deliberations of this council and of its committees, if any, which resulted in formal action, were taken in meetings open to the public in full compliance with applicable legal requirements, including Section 121.22 of the Ohio Revised Code. Section 4, this ordinance shall take effect on the earliest date allowed by law. Section 5, that this ordinance shall be an emergency measure necessary for the preservation of the public peace, health, safety, and general welfare, and shall, subject to the terms of Article 2D, 3D of the Charter, be effective immediately. The reason for the emergency is the need to complete these acquisitions in order to meet property acquisition deadlines associated with the Northland Boulevard Road project.
Council, you've heard the reading of ordinance 17, 2024. It does have the emergency clause. What is your pleasure?
Move to adopt.
Second.
All right, moved and seconded. Questions or discussion? Mr. Braun.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just wanted to point out this is the last parcel of property that's needed to complete the puzzle that ultimately will be the Northern Boulevard Improvement Project. And we had a lot of cooperation with a lot of businesses to reach this agreement. And I would particularly like to thank Mr. Agricola and his office for all the work that they did on getting it to me so that we could get the legal documents drafted and now get it to you. Thank you.
Thank you for that. You guys made it look easy, but I know a lot of work went on to make this happen, especially with all the right-of-ways that had to be adjusted. This was a dozen right-of-way parcels, so we appreciate that. Any other questions or discussion? Seeing none, Ms. Browder, if you poll council.
Mr. Vanover?
Aye.
Ms. Sullivan Wisecup?
Aye.
Mr. Gleaves?
Aye.
Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Ms. McFarland?
Aye.
Mrs. Webster? Mr. Anderson?
Aye. Ordinance 17, 2024 passes with 7 affirmative votes. All right, that's the end of ordinances and resolutions. Next, we have item 10. Ms. Sullivan Wisecup.
Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to make a motion to go in executive session according to Ohio Revised Code, Section 121.22G, under Article 2D1 of the Springdale Charter to discuss economic development issues.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Administration, are we expecting any action out of this? No? Okay. All right, we still need to poll council.
Yep.
If you could, Ms. Browder, if you'd poll council for moving to executive session.
Sure. Ms. Sullivan Wisecup?
Aye.
Mr. Vanover?
Aye.
Mr. Gleaves?
Aye.
Mrs. Webster? Mr. Jacobs?
Aye.
Ms. McFarland?
Aye.
Mr. Anderson?
Aye. Council is in executive session. We will return. All right, council's returned from executive session. Next, we'll move on to old business. We have one item of old business on our agenda. There was a litter discussion that was brought up at our last meeting. There was some discussion if council wanted to think about or start the process to maybe update the litter laws. I know administration's taken some action in the meanwhile. I don't know if you want to start with that and then see what discussion leads us. Mayor Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. And Mr. Jones and Mr. Yule can add to this. From the first time this came up a couple meetings ago, administratively, they immediately talked with Public Works and had them going out, checking out the specific areas that people had referenced, residents had referenced, members of council had referenced. And also, since our last meeting, there was the adjustment made on our portable electronic sign where folks have been by there. I'm sure you've seen the don't litter, no litter on there as well. There's been some discussion that we had last time that if council finds it to be appropriate, obviously it could increase the penalty with regard to what the law is now. But that's something for folks to consider if they think that's necessary, if they want to sit and sort of see how things go going forward. But I did want to make sure that folks were aware that administratively these things have been talked about and addressed, and I believe law enforcement's been talked to as well, that if these things come up, make sure that those get cited and that we're not giving warnings, but we're actually giving folks tickets.
And I know at our last meeting, administration mentioned that they felt that they had the tools to address this right now. You still feel that's the case? You're not asking for more help? Mr. Jones?
Thank you. We do feel that we have those tools. And adding on to what the mayor was saying, I spoke with Carl Lamping today, our building official, one of our property maintenance folks. He personally spoke with management, for example, at Hooters, and then he has visited twice in the last week. And he was very pleased with the progress and thought that he said on his second visit, he did not see a single piece of trash there. And he's also keeping a close eye on the apartment complexes as well. Just really trying to increase some of that observation and that he can pick up on himself. And he feels very comfortable that he can keep a good eye on it.
I appreciate that. Mayor Hawkins?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just one last thing. You know, you can't control other people, and a lot of times, as I've referenced, the things I see on Sharon Road in the morning on Saturday, Sunday morning, or on Kin Road on Saturday, Sunday morning, you wake up and someone has driven down through there and just thrown trash out there in the darkness of the night. You rarely see it actually happening when it goes on. I was taking my son, this is probably 2 weeks ago or so, downtown to a FC Cincinnati game, and it's probably still 4 o'clock on a Saturday, and as we're getting off of in Sharonville onto 75 South, brazenly, broad daylight, a car going, they had no plates, I'm assuming they're out of state, but they had no plates in the back of the vehicle, throws one bag out as they go up the on-ramp, and as they go a little further, they throw another bag out, just brazenly, and it's infuriating when those things are happening, but you see how people just don't care and have complete disregard for that community and, you know, what they have to do. And now, you know, someone from Sharonville has to go clean that up. And it's infuriating. But I just wanted to note that as well.
Thank you. Mr. Gleaves.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to personally thank the administration, Mr. Jones, Mr. Ohl, and the Building Department, Public Works. A lot of people have reached out to me and said that they've seen a difference. Electronic sign is fantastic. Thank you again. A question was brought to me, and I think I need to bring this to administration. Do we have Adopt a Highway through Springdale?
No, I think ODOT manages Adopt a Highway. I
ODOT
think that's
does.
managed through ODOT.
Okay.
I know in the past we've had cases where community service or like the sheriff's department has brought people out to areas in Springdale. I know they've been on Route 4, and that's been through various corrections bureaus too that have done cleanups. But I think ODOT manages that. Mayor Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. And along those lines, we have Springdale Nazarene had reached out with Pastor Dukes in terms of trying to do a community project, and they've been doing this with Mayor Webster over a number of years. And I think it's April 20th, if I'm not mistaken. But one thing that we had suggested as they're asking for different things was some cleanup, particularly on the off-ramp area right over here. And the red tape to go through that with ODOT is rather arduous. So it's not just simply, hey, look, you guys go out there and go clean this up, or you got permission to go do that. You have to go through all kinds of things with ODOT. So while that property is here, it's not controlled by us.
All right, any other discussion on the litter item? Well, it sounds like there's consensus that we'll appreciate the work that's been done and leave it at that, unless there's anyone that thinks I'm misstating. Mr. Vanover.
Thank you, Mr. President. Well, you can add Heritage Hill while you're checking, because usually Sunday morning after the Saturday night get-togethers, brazen is a lightly taken term. You'll have entire 12-packs, 24-packs just conveniently set down on the curb. Now, the good news is trash day is Monday, so you don't have to, look at that. But yeah, I said it before, until people change their heart, their attitude, speeding. I can, come over my backyard, and especially now the warm weather, and listen to the crotch rockets, the rice burners, the jake braking, blows up the sound barrier back there, and I sit probably 100, 150 feet down below the level 275. My wife would say, oh, call somebody. By the time I call and they get there, they're at Coleraine Avenue or better. So, it's infuriating. Several years ago, taking the kids to school, there was a contractor driving through, and he got caught by a school bus and chucked his McDonald's bag out the window. I politely went right behind him and got it and handed it back to him and proceeded to following through the neighborhood for about another 45 minutes. And of course, as karma would have it, he was working at a house that was a friend of mine's. Let's say he formerly was working in a house at a friend of mine's. But yeah, that's, it is. I mean, this is I look at wherever I go, if I wouldn't do it in my front yard, why would I do it in somebody else's front yard? But people have to adapt, a new attitude. And, if we can get away from these godforsaken plastic grocery bags, they're the bane of litter because they're in trees 60, 70 feet up in the air. So whoever thought that idea up many years ago, I would like to have about 5 minutes alone with them. But yeah, that's, the only alternative we have is hit them in the pocketbook. And if, this continued effort doesn't work, then, I say, well, let's start having them write checks. Thank you.
All right, any other discussion on the litter item? All right, any other old business to bring before council? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to new business. We have one item on the agenda to begin with, which is the summer meeting schedule. Mayor Hawkins.
Thank you, Mr. President. Council, the city administration is recommending that we go on summer session with regard to foregoing the first meetings in July and August, which would be July 3rd and August 7th. We would still have the meeting for July 17th and August 21st. Obviously, it's council's choice, but in terms of administratively looking at things that are projected, we think it would be fine and appropriate. And obviously, if something comes up where we had an emergency and we needed to go meet, we'd ask and notify if council would convene. So whatever council's pleasure is.
Ms. Sullivan-Weiskup.
Thank you. I am in favor of the summer meeting schedule.
Any other thoughts? Mr. Gleaves.
Oh, I am definitely in favor of the summer schedule.
All right. Ms. McFarland.
Sorry, does this only applies to council meetings, correct? Is it up to each individual commission or committee to change their schedules as well?
So it depends, and I'll refer to Mr. Braun for part of this question, but I believe the committees can make their own schedule, but some are required to have meetings available depending on what it is. So each board has its own rules. We're only talking about council's rules tonight, and we have, under the charter, we're required to have one meeting a month. The second meeting is something that we've done just because we're busy. Is that right? Is there anything you'd want to add to that, Mr. Braun, or I have it right? Great. All right, I don't believe we need any sort of motion or action for this. I can just cancel the meeting. So let's assume, unless anybody objects, this would be your chance. Otherwise, let's go ahead and plan on moving to our summer schedule as we have in past years, which would cancel the July 3rd and August 7th meeting, which is the first. So we'll have our full meeting as usual, the second meeting that's regularly scheduled. And again, if there's something comes up, we can meet. We'll set those out and get it done. So this doesn't mean we won't get business done if we don't need to, but it seems like we're in good shape for that. All right, any other new business? All right, next we have meetings and announcements. Mr. Vanover.
Thank you, Mr. President. We're getting the rental committee back together right now, tentatively for April 24th at 2 o'clock. I've checked with the administration, they're good. So if Mr. Anderson and Ms. Weiskup advise me otherwise, and we'll go with it.
All right. Mr. Ewell.
Thank you, Mr. President. Civil Service Commission will meet tomorrow, Thursday, April 4th at 2 p.m.
Ms. Sullivan-Weiskup.
Thank you, Mr. President. Planning Commission April meeting has been canceled.
Ms. McFarland.
Thank you, Mr. President. Board of Health will meet next Thursday, April 11th at 6:30. And we will have, We will have an announcement probably coming tomorrow for our first urban farming special committee meeting. It is currently on the website for tomorrow, but that date was not going to work out, so we'll have that announced in the next few days on the website.
Thank you. Mr. Gleaves.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Board of Zoning Appeals met March 26 at 5 p.m. We had a training session. It was conducted by Mr. Braun and Mr. Dale. During that period, we had elections. Motions was made for Tom Hall to become the BZA chairman. That motion was passed 7-0. Motion was made for Steve Gosser to be BZA vice chairman. That motion passed 7-0. Motion was also made for Michelle Gilmore to be the secretary. That motion is passed 7-0. And then all was sworn in, and we conducted our meeting. Our meeting was...
I'm sorry, Mr. Gleaves, could I interrupt you for a second? So we're in meetings announcements. We'll do the full committee reports at the next meeting. You're certainly welcome to share what happened at the Board of Zoning Appeals, but we'll do the committee reports at our next meeting.
Okay. Well, I won't be here next meeting,
Oh, that's fine.
so is it okay?
You can continue. I'm just saying, that's
Okay.
fine. I just want to make sure you knew normally
Yeah.
do those at the second meeting.
Yeah, I just want to get this out the way. I won't be here next meeting.
Okay.
Thank you. But I just want everybody to know also, application number 202-30858, property address 329 Cameron Road. There was a requested variance. The property owner, Ronald and Shelley Darnell, are requesting a variance to keep 5 chickens on their property until the natural death in violation of zoning code section 153-252 F6C1, where the husbandry of fowl may be raised or kept for resident owners' use on a lot not less than 3 acres of area, and in violation of zoning code section 153.252 F6C2, which requires not less than 100 feet from adjacent residential lot. In summary, this place was packed. The applicant spoke and raised very valid points about benefits of how well they take care of their chickens. And there were 7 to 8 neighbors that spoke in favor of chickens. 2 of the neighbors spoke out how they care for the chickens while the applicants aren't home. Now, no one stated that they wanted chickens. Everybody stated that they wanted the applicants to keep their chickens. And it was made quite clear by Councilman Jacobs and myself, Councilman Gleaves, that this issue has come before council. And a committee has been formed to look into the ordinance. So after all had been said and done, the BZA decided to table this application for 2 months to give the committee time to do their work. This was passed 6-1. Our next scheduled BZA meeting is April 23rd, 7 p.m. Are there any questions?
All right. Any other meetings and announcements? Sorry, Mayor Hawkins. And is this a question about BZA? Okay, the one thing I will say, though, for what it's, just so everyone's prepared, since we weren't ready for committee reports tonight, it's likely that we'll also have an update at our regular meeting when we do committee reports. And it's the other council member that's at that meeting can give the report if you're absent. So obviously you can have the discussion if we need to, but I do want to limit it as much as possible tonight since it'll come up again next month, and I think it'll be on the agenda and probably more appropriate then. Mayor Hawkins, did you want to add something to that tonight?
I don't want to address the pending matter before BZA at this time. I had something else separate.
Please.
So I did want to, we've already sung kudos of Elizabeth Johnson at the rec center, but I just wanted to say, being down there today, in case folks hadn't noticed this is the first time I'd seen this in the weight room, but she now has 1 rep max for different activities. And so the idea is you go down, if you top whatever the person is in their weight up there, then you can dry erase them and you can put yours up with your weight. So my back is going to be a little bit sore because I was trying to do some things that I probably haven't done for about 15 years. But just in case those want to see their names up on the the board up in the weight room, you can go down there and check that out and see what you can do. Men and women, variety of different activities, and I think she's going to change them on a monthly basis to see, give people the opportunity to do different things. So, thank you.
Are you challenging someone specifically on council? You were giving.
You know, I
heavy
looked at
eye.
you a lot during the course of that conversation, but no, I think anybody, you know, go down there and see what you can do.
You keep looking at me. I see you.
All right. Any other meetings and announcements or personal challenges related to the weight room? All right. Seeing none, we'll move on to communications from the audience. This is your second chance to speak to council. Communication to the audience, this is, again, if you'd like to address council for any reason, you'd come down to the podium. You have 5 minutes to address council for any matter you want to speak to us for. The floor is now open for communications from the audience. Second call. Third and final call. All right, I'm closing communications from the audience. Next, we'll turn to Mr. Jacobs, both for recap of legislative items and legislation in development, in whichever order he feels most appropriate.
Thank you, Mr. President. As you review your internal memorandum, item 1, an ordinance was addressed by ordinances number 13, 2024 and 14, 2024, 2 separate ordinances authorizing the execution of grant agreements with the State of Ohio Development for participation in the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act State Energy Efficiency Program for Ohio Communities, both passed with 7 affirmative votes. Item 2 was addressed by ordinance 15, 2024, an ordinance declaring certain city property as surplus property and authorizing the sale, disposal, or transfer of surplus property. That passed with 7 affirmative votes. Item 3 was addressed by ordinance 17, 2024, an ordinance authorizing the purchase of certain real property associated with the Northland Boulevard reconstruction project and declaring an emergency. That passed with 7 affirmative votes. Item 4 is forthcoming. That will be a resolution authorizing the city administrator to file an application with the Southwest Ohio Regional Transit Authority for transit infrastructure funds, and that will be before council on the 17th. And also on the 17th, we'll have a second public hearing for community development block grant project cycle money, unless there's anything else from administration.
Council good? All right, thank you. All right, all that's left is item 17. All right, we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.